Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us and staying with us through our technical difficulties. My name is Rocio Mota, and I am the coordinator for immigrant and undocumented student life here at the University of Maryland. And my presentation, the text is in Spanish. There is interpretation in Spanish, but if you want to ask questions in English or in Spanish, you can feel free to do so since I'm bilingual. So I wanted to start this presentation with my introduction, a little bit about me as I grew up and I have undocumented parents. And I think a lot of the times being able to talk about how having family members who are undocumented in our family is really important to normalize it so that we can know that, it's nothing to be ashamed of. There's a lot of people that are in the same similar situations. And we're all just trying to navigate what our options are here in this country. The main goal of my position at the university is to connect students to resources and also try to give them some ideas on how to get to college. Okay, so many parents always ask me the question, can my undocumented daughter or son go to the university? This is the question that I get the most often from parents. And the short answer is that yes. An undocumented student can go to the university and apply. However, the better question to ask or the better response that I can give you to guide you today is everyone can submit an application to anything, right? But it's more so about thinking about the next steps after the application. So even though anyone can apply to university, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll have the same uh, path as a student that's a US citizen. Right now, when a student is undocumented, they are charged initially and seen initially as international students when they go through the process. And it is up to the student to apply into different applications to see if they can change that. And there is a way to change that if you're eligible for certain things. And the reason why this is really important is that undocumented students, when they are charged international and state resident, that cost is higher. So we always want to make sure that we go the extra steps, ask the extra questions at this university, but I also tuition. The state of Maryland does have a law. It's called the Maryland Dream Act. And while it's not perfect, it is good that it exists. And I say that because a lot of states, especially if we look at more restrictive states that tend to have, governors and state legislators who are not friendly towards immigrants, refuse to even pass any state laws that are friendly for undocumented individuals. And so the fact that Maryland has the Maryland Dream Act, which is an option for undocumented students to potentially qualify for in-state tuition status and be charged at that rate is a good thing. But I understand that, even all laws and policies aren't necessarily always going to be 100% perfect for the
No
people on the
siempre
ground.
100% perfecto para los que están
So
acá.
the law and policies
Así
that I
que
want to talk
la
to you
ley,
today
la
is called the Maryland Dream Act. And these are all of the things that a student needs to have in order to be eligible to qualify for in-state tuition rates as an undocumented individual. And when I say undocumented, it could be someone, fully without papers. We also include students who are on temporary protective status, students who have applied for asylum with their family but have not necessarily heard back. Um, Many of people who are on the asylum process are waiting for years, right? So it could take a long time, and you're basically without status until then. Okay, so essentially you have to have gone and assisted to a high school in the state of Maryland and graduated. Many of the students will be applying during their senior year, and that is okay. You're not graduated yet. The university, once you are graduated, will ask you for that proof of your high school transcript or your diploma in order to ensure that you did graduate. Um, if you are an undocumented student and you have other family members who were undocumented and didn't know about this, the law also basically asks that you go back to a university and study within 6 years of graduating um, your high school diploma. And then it also asks that either the parent, legal guardian, or student has had 3 years of filing state taxes in the state of Maryland back to back, so consecutively, in order for that proof to be shown. One of the things that I want to highlight here that's really important is that many of us that come from communities where it's normal for, the aunt, our uncle, our cousin, older cousins, or just other family members to raise us, we may be bringing in, you know, children to be raised by someone else, and they don't know that they actually have to get their official legal guardianship over this child if they are undocumented, and that can be done through the family courts of the county that you live in, Montgomery or Prince George's County. And they don't ask about status when you do this. It is so important that you get this official legal guardianship through the official state court so that you can have this to show for the Maryland Dream Act if you are in care of someone that's not your direct child. Um, and then if you are a male student, you just have to sign up for it's called selective service, and it's just filling out a form. They don't really do much with it, but it just kind of is one of those things that male students have to do. And then the proof of the birth certificate to show that you are the mom or dad of the person who is applying for the Maryland Dream Act, if you're going to be showing your own taxes. It's almost really rare if a student who at 18 has 3 years of taxes. So we do see that it's the parents that are often the ones that have the taxes ready to show for this. And so, once a student has been accepted into the university as an undocumented student, then the next step would be to start filling out this paperwork here. Okay, so the second question that I get asked is, how can we pay for the university as undocumented individuals? The parents are undocumented, the child is undocumented, and so it's a very important next question to ask. So there are some options here in the state of Maryland. Some of them were mentioned earlier. The MHEC 1 application, which formerly was called the MISFA. So that's why you see people use those two things interchangeably because just last year the name was updated. But it's the same system and a very similar application to the years before. The name was the only thing that changed. And so every undocumented individual who is eligible for that Maryland Dream Act is also eligible to apply for Maryland state aid. Just like the FAFSA, this is due that 1st of March by the state. And then students are notified in the summer to see if they have received an award. That's going to look at the parents' taxes as well. So that information will be really important to have. Um, so it's super, super important that it's there. If you're the legal guardian, again, you're going to need to show that in order to be able to upload those taxes on behalf of the student that you're saying you're responsible for. Um, in addition to that, if you get the Maryland State aid, you will also be able to apply for delegate and senatorial scholarships. This is something that your child will have to look for to see who's their delegate and state representative. You can actually contact them and say, hey, I'm interested in applying to your scholarships. Can you show me the form or can you tell me the process? This can also be done as soon as they submit the MHEC 1 by March, then start contacting the representatives and see if they can help you out there. Many of the times, students and families will ask, am I eligible for scholarships? And it is very institutionally specific. Um, So here in the state of Maryland, I do believe that they review students who are undocumented for merit aid. That's something that has been in the most recent years an update. Before that, that wasn't the case, but through our office, we did a lot of advocacy for that. And then I know a lot of institutions like UMBC, Towson is starting to update their policies. So it's important to apply to a variety of schools so that you can get the most options available to you. I do want to highlight two scholarships that I have here. An organization called Immigrants Rising. You can take a picture of this. If you go on the Google and just type in Immigrant Rising scholarships, they already have a ton of scholarships listed for students who don't have citizenship, and your student can go and apply for that every single month and see what's available to them. There's also the Esperanza Education Fund, which is eligible to a DMV undocumented student to apply for and to get additional aid in the area as well. Okay, so just some important takeaways. It is so important to plan ahead of time. Parents and students will literally still tell me right now, today, or even yesterday, they'll say, "Hey, are there any scholarships available?" And by the time you ask me if there's any scholarships available, if you're looking for it that semester or within those weeks, it's too late. It is very normalized in this country to apply to scholarships for the current year you're applying for, the year before. So if you're asking me in that same year, do you have any scholarships? They've already been given to the families last year and promised for this year. And so when you are a senior, when your child is a senior, please tell them this is the time that you need to incorporate scholarship searching, scholarship planning. They could probably do the searching and planning out of what they're going to apply to junior year and then actually apply to it the senior year that they're there. It never hurts to ask, but don't be surprised if we say, hey, all the deadlines have passed. Now you have to focus on next year's scholarships this year. So please plan ahead of time. It is so important to get connected to someone. I'll give you my contact information after this, but then there's also a lot of representatives in the other community colleges that you can reach out to. And a lot of us are so used to working with undocumented students, like it's more normalized than what you think. And then the third is making sure that you and your family is filling out taxes with time. Even if you have jobs where you're maybe getting some cash instead of uh, a paycheck, it is so important that you really reconsider filing those taxes so that you have something to show for your son or daughter when they're trying to apply for the Maryland Dream Act. And then having a lot of realistic discussions as a family. I think one of the things um, that I've seen a variety of students do, because again, I've seen so many students now graduate and try to navigate having a bachelor's degree while undocumented. A lot of them end up going the entrepreneurship route because even still, a lot of employers don't necessarily want to hire if you don't have the work authorization. I've seen some few students adjust where, they have a longtime partner that they met in college, and then once they're out of college, they decide to get married, and that helps them with the adjustment so that they can use their degree later on while they're in process of waiting for their status to be adjusted. So, whatever those discussions are as a family, like be realistic. Your son or daughter may still struggle to find employment even with a bachelor's, but you still want to encourage them if that's their goal because you never know if they're going to be able to adjust later with marriage, or if they'll be able to go and open their own business. So, for example, I had a student who majored in financing and now she's very popular on social media and she does financial planning for Hispanic families. Um, and she's fully undocumented. And so, another student that I know did graphic design and does their freelance own business through graphic design. Obviously, there's going to be some certain careers that cater to this way than others. So, even looking at that and getting some consejos or advice from professionals would be really important. But I always say, like, it's always worth going and getting those degrees because you never know. what other options you could have for relief later on, and at least you have that as a backup. I've also had a few students that, have gotten that degree and have decided to return back to their home countries with that degree. And so that's usually in the minority of my students, but that may happen here and there. So students at least have something to draw back on if they end up having to go back home. So yes, very realistic conversations is really important. And then here's my contact information. Here's my email and my office phone number. So you can feel free to shoot me an email in Spanish or in English, and then also give me a phone call and leave me a voicemail, and I'll usually reach out to you within a few days.